Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's Sebastian from the Rhythm section, and today I'm going to be reviewing the fourth album from Yves Tumor called Heaven to a Tortured Mind. Tumor broke out majorly in 2018 with their third album, Safe in the Hands of Love, which was a pretty psychedelic avant-garde pop album with a lot of industrial sounds that made it on a ton of end-of-year lists in 2018. On the new album, the psychedelic sounds still continue pretty strong, but lots of the industrial sounds have been reeled back a little bit. It's still pretty noisy, but not quite to the same extent. And in place of that, there's still weirdness in this album for sure, but it's been replaced by kind of, on some songs, like an off-kilter soul singer vibe, similar to Tyler the Creator's Igor album from last year. You can hear the sound on songs like where Tumor has a pretty classic soul singer type vocal delivery, but it sounds like their backing band is like Throbbing Gristle or something. It has some industrial sounds in the background for sure. And also on the banger single Gospel for a New Century, which has a pretty great chorus, which is total fireworks and a great sing-along chorus, and a pretty awesome vocal melody too, as well as some kind of sour but triumphant horn sections, which are kind of like more of a, they're dissonant for sure, but kind of like a good sour, like Airheads or something. The vocals are a standout on lots of tracks here, not just Gospel for a New Century. For example, on the second song, Medicine Burn, there are these phasing guitars and synths in the left and right channels that create an instantly psychedelic sound, and Tumor is totally matching the psychedelic sound with their vocal delivery on the song. Like when they sing Severed Heads, it's like way more swagger than anyone has ever had when they're saying Severed Heads. On the song Dream Palette, their vocals are also pretty good. There's a pretty great vocal melody here too, and a really catchy chorus, and the tone of like a panicked relationship, it's really sold through their lyrics. And Tumor also does a great job harmonizing with their guest singer on the song, something that they do through multiple songs on this album, including the single Kerosene, which has a pretty great feature from another singer who does a bit of a vocal riffing after the first chorus, which is pretty wonky and really fits the sound of the album really well. The only song where I'm not totally sold on the vocals is Strawberry Privilege, which has a pretty interesting guest vocal, which is very haunting. It has like some bebop type background vocal sounds. However, Tumor's performance themselves is kind of overselling it on how vulnerable they sound on this song, and Tumor comes across like definitely vulnerable, but the song probably could have used a second take. Continuing with the trend of the really strong vocals, the sonics in general on this album are great. The production by Justin Raisin is fantastic. Justin Raisin produced Joji's Sanctuary, as well as Angel Olsen's 2016 album My Woman, and his production on here is really excellent. The song Identity Trade, for example, has some great horns on it. It's kind of more of a jazzy transitional cut, but it also has these flangers on here that have a super watery tone and are really psychedelic that totally fit Tumor's lyrics about water from the fire. It just matches really well on this song. The song Folie Imposée has a really cool glitchy house beat, which sounds totally nocturnal, and the transition between Romanticist and Dream Palette is like really well done. It has like these sound effects that sound like fireworks coming through, and then once it gets to Dream Palette, there are these super compressed drums with Tumor kind of vocalizing like with some breathy vocals over these drums, and it's a super bombastic transition between these songs that sounds great. The only problem is that at some points on this album, speaking of fireworks, the album can come across as a little bit too much like fireworks. Like the sonics are great, but it can seem a little lacking in substance sometimes. Lacking in substance in the sense that it's like it burns bright like a firework, but then it's very passing as well, like there's not much left after the fact. I would credit this feeling mostly to the fact that this album has a lot of short transitional cuts, like the aforementioned Identity Trade, as well as Hasdelin Lights, which is a kind of more symphonic transitional cut with some good panicked sounding vocals. But in the end, the cut is just not very, there's not really much happening. It's kind of uneventful. You can say the same thing about another transitional cut here, Asteroid Blues, which has a pretty good groovy instrumental, which I really like. But there aren't any major lyrics on this song, and we've already had so many transitional cuts here that it really feels like something more ambitious should have been done with this song to justify its presence, even if I do like the bass line on it. And other times the lyrics seem a little unambitious too. For example, the song Kerosene, it sounds amazing, but I think the lyrics are just slightly too repetitive for the 5-minute runtime. And on the song Superstar, when he's repeating lyrics like "You're my superstar," it's just like, could we not write something like a little bit more substantive than this? And finally, the closer, A Greater Love. It's a pretty nice closer. It closes the album pretty well, I'd say. The album, after the 8th track, it kind of winds down. It's a bit of like a come down from the super trippy first 2/3. I think it's a nice closer, but the vocals have a kind of like trodden upon metaphor, I think, of like changing and seasons that I think doesn't bring a whole lot of nuance to the lyrics on the album. In conclusion, I think Tumor's 4th album is incredibly passionate. Their vocals are great, and the production is amazing from Tumor as well as Justin Raisin. It's super psychedelic, and there's some awesome funky sounds on this album, as well as a pretty unique emotional vibe just across the entire thing. I just feel like sometimes Tumor is kind of drowning in their emotions on a few songs, and the lyrics get a little bit maybe too corny or repetitive, and maybe some of the instrumentals are just a little indulgent, and it seems like something slightly more ambitious could have been done with them rather than just throwing on another transitional cut that sounds cool, but there's not a whole lot going on. So I'm feeling about between a 7 and an 8, probably closer to a 7 on this album. I just wish it had been more ambitious, but the sound textures and everything related to the sonics and his vocal delivery just sound amazing. I just think the concept and the lyrics could have been a lot stronger. Regardless, I think you guys should definitely give this album a listen. It'll totally brighten your day through quarantine. I think it's super funky, and if you like this album a lot, give this album a shot. Stone Roses, self-titled, 80s psychedelic rock album. It has a lot of the same psychedelic and dance sounds that Tumor is combining on this album. However, the Stone Roses album is a bit more rocky, kind of more punk and jangle pop influenced, if you like that kind of sound. And I think if you really liked this Yves Tumor album, then you're definitely going to love this Stone Roses album too. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and comment and subscribe. Bye-bye.